Hello.
I mapped the mysteries of distant galaxies, but couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. When my brilliant wife suddenly turned cold, I blamed her AI startup's demands. Now, after months of pulling away, she's desperately seeking my attention again. Something changed overnight. The scientist in me knows sudden transformations like this don't happen without a catalyst, and I'm about to discover a truth more devastating than a collapsing star. My name is Derek Sutton. I'm 42 years old, and I'm an astrophysicist working at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. My career has been dedicated to studying rare cosmic phenomena, those fleeting moments in space that tell us so much about our universe. The irony isn't lost on me that I could predict the behavior of celestial bodies millions of miles away, but couldn't see what was happening in my own home. I met Haley at a tech conference in San Francisco 11 years ago. She was presenting her groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence, and I was immediately captivated, not just by her brilliant mind, but by the passion in her eyes when she talked about her research. That same evening, I worked up the courage to approach her at the networking event. One conversation led to coffee, which led to dinner, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. Marrying Haley wasn't just a choice. It was the easiest decision I'd ever made. She was everything I'd been looking for: intelligent, ambitious, kind, and with a wicked sense of humor that could make even my worst days better. We complemented each other perfectly, her focus on the future of AI and mine on the mysteries of the cosmos. Our friends jokingly called us the power couple of the century. What I valued most about our relationship was our ability to communicate. We talked about everything, from complex scientific theories to which brand of coffee was superior. When disagreements arose, we'd sit down, hash things out, and find common ground. It wasn't always easy, but we made the effort because we both wanted our marriage to work. Our life together fell into a comfortable rhythm. Weekdays were busy with our respective research, but weekends were sacred. Hikes in the San Gabriel Mountains, exploring hidden gem restaurants in LA, or simply lounging around our Pasadena home, reading scientific journals and debating their merits. We hosted dinner parties for colleagues where conversations about quantum physics and neural networks flowed as freely as the wine. For 8 years, we were rock solid. We supported each other through career challenges, her struggles to secure funding for her AI projects, my disappointment when a research paper was rejected. When she finally launched her own AI startup 3 years ago, I was her biggest cheerleader, just as she had been for me when I was selected to lead a major observational project studying gravitational waves. Looking back, those years were nothing short of perfect. We were partners in the truest sense of the word, equals who respected each other's ambitions while building a life together. If anyone had told me then that our marriage would crumble, I would have laughed in their face. But that's the thing about life. It can change in an instant, like a supernova that suddenly outshines an entire galaxy before collapsing into darkness. I never saw it coming. Maybe I should have. The first signs appeared last fall, when I was deep into preparations for observing a rare binary neutron star merger. It was the kind of event astronomers wait entire careers to witness. A cosmic dance that releases gravitational waves powerful enough to ripple through the fabric of space-time itself. I noticed Haley growing distant, but initially chalked it up to her own professional pressures. Her AI startup, Neurotech, had just secured second-round funding, and she was juggling investor demands with technical challenges. Our once animated dinner conversations dwindled into brief exchanges about logistics. Who would pick up groceries or pay the electric bill? "Everything okay?" I asked one evening as we sat on opposite ends of our sectional sofa, both absorbed in our laptops. "Fine," she replied without looking up. "Just swamped with this neural network architecture." I nodded and went back to my data, but something in her tone felt off. The warmth that usually colored her voice when she discussed her work was missing, replaced by a flat indifference. Over the next few weeks, I noticed other changes. She began coming home later, blaming emergency debugging sessions and investor meetings. Her usual texts throughout the day, ranging from science jokes to simple thinking of you messages, stopped completely. When she did speak to me, her answers were clipped, her gaze rarely meeting mine. Did I do something wrong? I finally asked one Saturday morning as she was hurriedly getting dressed to go to the office, something unprecedented in our weekend routine. Not everything is about you, Derek, she snapped, yanking a sweater over her head. Some of us have deadlines that don't revolve around stargazing. Her words stung. In all our years together, she'd never dismissed my work like that. Astronomy wasn't just stargazing to me. It was unlocking the universe's most profound secrets, and she knew that better than anyone. I tried to tell myself she was just stressed. Silicon Valley startup culture was notoriously brutal, and she was under tremendous pressure to deliver results. Still, a nagging feeling persisted. This wasn't just stress. Something fundamental had shifted. One night, I reached for her hand across the dinner table, a simple gesture we'd shared countless times. She flinched slightly before allowing the contact, her fingers limp in mine. Her eyes darted to her watch, then back to her barely touched salmon. I need to review some code tonight, she said, withdrawing her hand and standing up. Don't wait up. As I watched her retreat to her home office, a hollow feeling settled in my chest. The woman I'd married, the one who would spend hours discussing the ethical implications of AI or the philosophical questions raised by my cosmic research, seemed to be fading away, replaced by a stranger who could barely stand my touch. I told myself it was just a phase, that things would go back to normal once her project stabilized and my observation period ended. I was wrong. This wasn't the beginning of the end. It was already the middle. By winter, the emotional distance between Haley and me had transformed into physical avoidance. My wife, who once couldn't keep her hands off me, now flinched at my touch like I carried some contagious disease. Our bedroom, once a sanctuary of connection, became a cold battleground of rejection. Night after night, I'd reach for her, only to be met with an arsenal of excuses. I have a migraine. I'm too stressed about the investor presentation. I need to be fresh for my 6 a.m. meeting. I just took a sleeping pill. After weeks of rejection, I finally confronted her one night as she turned away from me for the 20th consecutive evening. Haley, we haven't been intimate in over 3 months, I said, trying to keep frustration from my voice. What's going on? She sighed dramatically, as if I'd asked her to explain quantum physics to a kindergartner. Not everything is about sex, Derek. I'm building a company from the ground up. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? This isn't about sex, I replied quietly. It's about connection. We're like strangers passing in the hallway. You're being melodramatic, she muttered, pulling the comforter tighter around herself. Just because I don't want to jump you every night doesn't mean there's a problem. But there was a problem, and it was growing larger by the day. My wife refused intimacy for months, treating our marriage like an inconvenient roommate situation. The woman who once wrote me love notes on the bathroom mirror now barely acknowledged my presence. I threw myself into my work, spending longer hours at the observatory. The distant stars became better company than my own wife. At least they were consistent, predictable in their cosmic dance. When the gravitational wave event I'd been waiting for finally appeared in our data, I had no one to celebrate with. My text to Haley went unanswered until the following day, when she replied with a cursory congrats. No exclamation point, no follow-up questions, nothing. That night, lying awake in our bed while Haley slept with her back to me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how something that once felt so right could go so wrong. The woman beside me was a stranger wearing my wife's face, occupying her side of the bed while keeping miles between us. The irony wasn't lost on me. I studied invisible forces binding celestial bodies together across vast distances, yet couldn't bridge the inch-wide chasm between my wife's shoulder and mine. In the darkness of our bedroom, I felt more alone than I ever had staring into the infinite abyss of space. When my major observational project finally concluded in early spring, I decided enough was enough. Whatever was happening between us needed to be addressed head-on. No more tiptoeing around the issue. No more pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I planned carefully, making her favorite dinner, butternut squash risotto with seared scallops, and opening a bottle of the Napa Valley Chardonnay we'd discovered on our 5th anniversary trip. I set the dining room table with the hand-blown glass plates we'd bought in Venice, lit candles, and waited. Haley came home late, as usual, raising an eyebrow at the elaborate setup. "What's the occasion?" she asked, dropping her laptop bag on the sideboard. "No occasion," I replied, pulling out her chair. "I just thought we should have a proper dinner together. It's been a while." She sat reluctantly, her eyes darting to her smartwatch twice before I'd even serve the wine. We ate in awkward silence for several minutes before I gathered my courage. Haley, we need to talk about what's happening between us. She set down her fork with deliberate slowness. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. You've been distant for months. We barely talk. We never touch. You're hardly ever home. It feels like you're avoiding me. I'm building a company, Derek, she replied, her voice tight. It requires sacrifices. I understand hard work and sacrifice. You know I do. But this is different. It's like you've checked out of our marriage entirely. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's ridiculous. I'm sitting right here, aren't I? Physically, yes. But you haven't really been present in months. Something flashed across her face. Guilt? Anger? It was gone too quickly to identify. You're being overly sensitive, she said dismissively. Not everything is a cosmic crisis requiring analysis. That stung. Another dig at my profession, at something she knew mattered deeply to me. I'm not analyzing, I said quietly. I'm just asking what's going on. We used to tell each other everything, and now I feel like I don't know you at all. People change, Derek. Maybe you should try it sometime, instead of having the same routine every day. Her words hit like a meteor strike. Was that how she saw me? Boring? Predictable? That's not fair, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And it doesn't explain what's happening to us. She stood abruptly. What's happening is you're making a big deal out of nothing. I'm tired, I'm stressed, and now I'm being interrogated instead of supported. I don't need this right now. Before I could respond, she grabbed her bag and walked out, leaving me alone with cooling risotto and guttering candles. My carefully planned conversation had crashed and burned in less than 15 minutes. After our failed conversation, I was desperate for answers. Something wasn't adding up, and the scientist in me couldn't leave a mystery unsolved. If Haley wouldn't tell me what was wrong, maybe someone else could shed light on the situation. I reached out to Mia, Haley's closest friend since graduate school. We'd always gotten along well, and she'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding. She agreed to meet for coffee at a small cafe near Caltech. I appreciate you meeting me, I said once we were seated. I'm worried about Haley. Mia fidgeted with her chai latte. Worry how? She's completely changed. Distant, irritable, never home. We barely speak anymore. I hesitated before adding. It's like she's a different person. To my surprise, Mia looked genuinely confused. Really? She seems the same to me. Busy with neurotech, sure, but that's to be expected. The same. I couldn't hide my disbelief. When was the last time you saw her? Last weekend. We had brunch in Santa Monica, then went shopping. She was in great spirits, excited about some new algorithm they're implementing. My stomach tightened. Last weekend, Haley had told me she was working at the office all day. I'd brought her lunch, only to find her assistant awkwardly explaining that Haley wasn't in. Did she mention anything about problems at home? With us? Mia shook her head. Not at all. She showed me the birthday gift she's planning for your anniversary. That telescope attachment you've been talking about seems pretty thoughtful for someone having marital issues. Our anniversary was months away, and I hadn't mentioned any telescope equipment. Something wasn't right. I tried a different angle. Has she mentioned anyone new in her life? New colleagues, investors, friends. Mia's expression changed subtly. A flash of something before neutrality reasserted itself. Just the usual startup crowd, I think. Mia, I said quietly, if you know something, please tell me. I'm trying to save my marriage here. She sighed, shoulders slumping. Look, Derek, I honestly don't know anything specific. Haley hasn't confided in me about any issues between you two. She paused. But what? There's a new investor she mentions a lot. Trevor something. British guy, tech background. The way she talks about him is, I don't know, different. Different how? Mia looked uncomfortable. More animated? She lights up when his name comes up. But that could just be excitement about the funding. You know how passionate she is about her work. I nodded numbly, though alarm bells were ringing in my head. I'd never heard Haley mention anyone named Trevor. After Mia left, I sat alone, turning our conversation over in my mind. Either Haley was putting on a convincing show for her friends, or something more complicated was happening. Something that involved a British investor I'd never heard of, and lies about where she was spending her weekends. For the first time, an ugly possibility reared its head, one I'd been subconsciously avoiding. What if Haley's distance wasn't about stress or work pressure? What if there was someone else? After my conversation with Mia, I retreated into myself. If Haley was leading a double life, one version for me, another for everyone else, then maybe I needed to protect myself emotionally. I started pulling away, creating distance that matched what she'd already put between us. I took on extra responsibilities at JPL, volunteering for overnight observation shifts and weekend data analysis sessions. If she noticed my absence, she didn't mention it. One night, I didn't come home at all, sleeping on the cot in my office after a late observing run. No concerned text, no worried call, just silence. My office became my sanctuary. JPL had designed comfortable spaces for scientists working long hours, decent showers, a small kitchenette, even a decent sofa. I expanded my emergency drawer to include several changes of clothes, toiletries, and non-perishable snacks. I was preparing, though I couldn't admit it to myself yet, for a life apart from Haley. Colleagues noticed my extended hours but attributed it to professional dedication. Derek's chasing gravitational waves again, they'd joke. Only Maria, my research assistant, seemed concerned. "You've been here for 72 straight hours," she commented one morning, placing a coffee on my desk. "Everything okay at home?" "Just committed to the project," I replied automatically. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me, but was too professional to pry further. "The data will still be there after a shower and a real meal, you know." I nodded absently, already turning back to my computer. The truth was, I welcomed the distraction of work. The cosmic problems I faced were complex, but solvable through logic and mathematics. They made sense in ways my marriage no longer did. The irony wasn't lost on me. For months, I'd blamed Haley's workaholism for our problems. Now I was doing exactly the same thing, using JPL as an escape from the emptiness of her home. When I did go home, I arrived late and left early, minimizing our time together. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to disturb her when I came in after midnight. She didn't object. One evening, I found a note on the kitchen counter: "Conference in Seattle this weekend. Back Tuesday." No further explanation, no invitation to join her, not even a goodbye in person. Just another absence in a marriage increasingly defined by them. I should have felt angry, hurt, betrayed. Instead, I felt nothing but a dull ache where my heart used to be. The emotional numbness was almost a relief after months of confusion and pain. That weekend, I didn't even bother going home. Why pretend to maintain a household that was already falling apart? I stayed at JPL, losing myself in data streams and spectral analyses, searching for patterns in distant stars because I couldn't make sense of my life on Earth. After nearly 2 months of minimal contact, I was adjusting to my new normal, a marriage that existed only on paper. I'd settled into a routine at JPL, finding a strange peace in the predictability of scientific research compared to the chaos of my personal life. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, my phone lit up with Haley's name. "Can you please come home tonight? I miss you." I stared at the message in disbelief. After months of pulling away, after treating me like an inconvenience in her life, now she missed me? Part of me wanted to ignore it, to give her a taste of her own medicine. But curiosity won out. "I'll be there around 7. I responded, keeping it brief. When I arrived home that evening, I barely recognized our house. The lights were dimmed, candles flickered on the dining table, and the aroma of my favorite lamb tagine filled the air. Haley emerged from the kitchen wearing a dress I hadn't seen in months, her hair styled the way I'd always loved. "You're here," she said, her smile wide but her eyes watchful, assessing my reaction. "You asked me to come," I replied, keeping my tone neutral despite my confusion. Dinner was surreal. Suddenly, Haley was attentive, asking about my research, laughing at my jokes, touching my hand across the table. The woman who'd spent months pushing me away was now hanging on my every word, practically begging for my attention. She refilled my wine glass, served my favorite dessert, and gazed at me with an intensity that once would have made my heart race. Now it just made me suspicious. "What's going on, Haley?" I finally asked as she cleared her plates. "What do you mean? Can I make a nice dinner for my husband?" After months of barely acknowledging my existence, it seemed sudden. She sighed dramatically. "I know I've been distant. Neurotech has been all-consuming." She reached for my hand. "But I've realized what's important. You're important, Derek. Us." Her words should have warmed me. Instead, they rang hollow. Something in her delivery felt rehearsed, her sudden affection calculated rather than genuine. What happened to the Seattle conference? I asked casually. A flash of confusion crossed her face before she recovered. It ended early. Budget cuts across the industry. They canceled the last day of sessions. An obvious lie. I checked the conference website out of curiosity. It had ended exactly when scheduled. Throughout the evening, she kept finding reasons to touch me, adjusting my collar, brushing imaginary lint from my shoulder, letting her hand linger on my arm. When we moved to the living room, she sat unnecessarily close, her thigh pressed against mine. After months of flinching away from my touch, my wife was suddenly all over me. My scientific mind couldn't help but analyze the abrupt shift. People don't change overnight without cause. Something had happened, something significant enough to make Haley stage this elaborate performance of marital bliss. As she leaned in to kiss me, I couldn't help but wonder, was she truly having a change of heart, or was this sudden affection born of necessity rather than desire? After months of refusing intimacy, why was my wife now begging for my attention? For a week, I played along with Haley's sudden transformation, observing her like a suspicious, celestial anomaly. Behind her renewed affection, I sensed anxiety. She checked her phone constantly when she thought I wasn't looking, startled at unexpected sounds, laughed too loudly at mediocre jokes. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was working late at JPL when Maria knocked on my office door. "There's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent." I expected Haley, perhaps bringing dinner as part of her new attentive wife routine. Instead, I found Emma Carter, Neurotech's head of marketing and Haley's colleague, looking uncomfortable in the hallway. "Emma, what's wrong?" She glanced around, lowering her voice. "Can we talk somewhere private?" We walked to the observatory garden, a quiet spot even during the day, deserted at 8 p.m. Emma paced nervously before facing me. "I shouldn't be here, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you." She took a deep breath. "Haley's been having an affair with Trevor Blackwood." Despite my suspicions, hearing it confirmed felt like a physical blow. "Trevor Blackwood, the British investor?" Emma nodded. "It started about 6 months ago, right after he joined our funding round. They thought they were being discreet, but..." She shrugged. "Startup spaces are small. People notice. Why tell me now?" My voice sounded distant, detached. "Because it imploded spectacularly last week. Trevor wasn't just sleeping with Haley. He was stealing her AI research. When she discovered his real company was developing a competing product, she confronted him." Emma looked genuinely sad. He laughed in her face, told her she was just a convenient source of information, and other things. The timing aligned perfectly with Haley's sudden interest in repairing our marriage. She hadn't had a change of heart. She'd been abandoned by her lover and was retreating to the safety of our relationship. "There's more," Emma continued reluctantly. "Trevor's pulling his investment, which means Neurotech is in serious trouble. Without new funding." She didn't need to finish. "Without funding, Haley's startup would collapse." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. "Because you seem like a decent guy, and because what they did was wrong." She handed me a thumb drive. "This has their email exchanges. I'm the marketing lead. I have access to company communications. I thought you might need proof." After Emma left, I sat alone in the garden, watching stars appear as twilight faded to night. The cosmos continued its eternal dance, indifferent to human betrayals. Somehow, that was comforting, the reminder that in the grand scale of the universe, my pain was infinitesimal. Yet it didn't feel infinitesimal. It felt all-consuming, a black hole devouring everything I believed about my marriage. I drove home in a strange state of calm, the thumb drive heavy in my pocket. I didn't need to look at its contents. I already knew the truth. The only question remaining was what to do with it. I entered our house with an eerie sense of calm, like the stillness before a supernova. Haley was in the kitchen, putting final touches on what smelled like my favorite chocolate souffle. Another performance in her ongoing show of being the perfect wife. "You're just in time," she said, smiling brightly. "I thought we could have dessert by the fireplace." I sat at the kitchen island, watching her move around the space with practiced grace. This woman, this stranger wearing my wife's face, had shared my bed and my life for years. Now I was seeing her clearly for the first time. "How's Trevor Blackwood?" I asked quietly. The soufflé dish clattered against the counter as she froze. When she turned, her face had drained of color. "What? Your British investor. The one you've been sleeping with for the past 6 months. The one who stole your research and dumped you last week. That Trevor." She opened her mouth, closed it, then leaned against the counter as though her legs might give out. "Who told you? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it?" For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then her shoulders slumped in defeat. "It's complicated. Seems pretty straightforward to me. You had an affair, he used you, and now that he's gone, you're suddenly interested in being my wife again." "It wasn't like that," she protested weakly. "Trevor understood me, understood the pressure I'm under. He was there when I was home waiting for you." I cut her off. "When I was trying to figure out why my wife couldn't stand to be near me. When I was blaming myself for whatever was wrong between us." Tears filled her eyes. "Derek, please. I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something, but it's over now. I realized what really matters." "You realize what really matters when he dumped you and pulled his funding." I corrected her. "Now Neurotech is in trouble, and you need a safety net." She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed humorlessly. "Was it fair to lie to me for months? To make me think I was the problem? To come back only when your other option disappeared?" "I love you," she whispered. "I always have." "No, Haley. You love what I represent. Stability, security, a backup plan. That's not love. That's self-preservation." She started crying in earnest now, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone makes mistakes. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy, take time off work, whatever you need." What I needed was a wife who respected our vows. What I needed was honesty. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. What I need now is a divorce. The word hung between us like a physical thing. Haley's tears stopped abruptly, replaced by something harder, colder. "You don't mean that." "I do. I've had months to think about what matters to me. Trust matters. Loyalty matters. Neither of which you have. So that's it. 11 years of marriage, and you're just walking away." "I'm not the one who walked away, Haley. You did that months ago. I'm just finally acknowledging it." As I headed for the door, she called after me, her voice rising in panic. "Where are you going? We need to talk about this." "I'm going back to the observatory. There's a meteor shower tonight. I'd rather watch distant celestial bodies than continue this particular collision course." I left her standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the props of her elaborate performance. Candles, wine, chocolate souffle cooling in the sudden chill of reality. Filing for divorce wasn't an easy decision, but by the time I did, I knew there was no other option. When I returned to our house 3 days after the confrontation, Haley had shifted strategies, from desperate affection to calculated contrition. "I've booked us couples therapy," she announced as soon as I walked in to collect some clothes. "Next Tuesday at 2 p.m. I won't be there," I replied, heading for the bedroom. She followed, her voice rising. "So that's it? You won't even try? One mistake, and you're throwing away 11 years. I turned to face her. "It wasn't one mistake, Haley. It was hundreds of choices. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you chose him over me. Every time you came home and pretended everything was fine." "People overcome affairs all the time," she argued. "Marriage is about working through the hard parts. Marriage is about trust," I countered. "And once it's gone, there's nothing to build on." The divorce proceedings were surprisingly civilized. We sold the house, divided our assets, and parted ways with minimal drama. Neurotech ultimately folded when alternative funding couldn't be secured in time. The revolutionary AI algorithms Haley had been developing were acquired by a larger tech company. Ironically, one of Trevor Blackwood's competitors. Haley tried reaching out several times in the months that followed. Coffee to catch up, lunch to get closure. Each time, I declined politely but firmly. She wasn't seeking reconciliation. She was looking for absolution I couldn't give her. A year after our divorce was finalized, JPL offered me the opportunity to join an international collaboration at the European Southern Observatory in Chile. I accepted without hesitation. The pristine skies of the Atacama Desert provided perfect conditions for my research, and the distance from California offered its own kind of clarity. In the thin mountain air of the observatory, surrounded by the vast infinity of the cosmos, I found perspective, The pain that once consumed me shrank to its proper proportion. Not gone, but manageable. A scar rather than an open wound. I occasionally heard updates about Haley through mutual friends. She'd moved to Seattle, joined another startup, started dating again. I wished her well, genuinely. What she'd done had caused immense pain, but holding on to anger would only bind me to that pain forever. The most valuable lesson from my failed marriage wasn't about betrayal, or even about love. It was about self-worth. I'd spent months blaming myself, adjusting my behavior, trying to understand what I'd done wrong. The truth was simpler and harder. Sometimes you could do everything right and still lose. People make choices that have nothing to do with your value or worth. Standing under the brilliant canopy of stars in Chile, I finally understood something fundamental. Just as the universe operates according to physical laws regardless of our human desires, people will act according to their own nature. We can observe, theorize, even predict, but ultimately, we can only control our own responses. I chose to respond by rebuilding, by focusing on research that expanded humanity's understanding of the cosmos. The gravitational waves I studied, ripples in space-time caused by violent cosmic events, seemed an apt metaphor for how Haley's betrayal had rippled through my life. But those ripples were fading now, diminishing with distance and time. Life continues. The universe expands. And somewhere in its infinite possibilities lies hope.
Bye.